What if the most important message you would ever receive arrived without a single notification? Imagine a truth so powerful it could crack the foundations of a nation, yet so quiet it was mistaken for silence. Before the heavens closed for 400 years, before the age of prophets ended in a great and terrible hush, God sent one final voice, not with trumpets, but with a whisper designed to wound the silence. If you believe that some stories are timeless, holding a mirror to our own souls, then make sure you're subscribed to our channel. You won't want to miss the journey we're on together. His name was Malachi. In the grand pantheon of Israel's prophets, he wasn't a statesman like Isaiah or a man of profound sorrow like Jeremiah. His name simply meant "my messenger." But the dispatch he carried was not one of comfort. He brought no prophecy of immediate prosperity, no easy blessing to soothe the conscience. He carried something far more volatile, clarity. And in any society that has perfected the art of looking good, clarity is a fire. It burns away the facade. After his voice faded from the dusty streets of Jerusalem, heaven would not speak a prophetic word again for 4 long centuries. Imagine it. 400 years, a chasm of divine silence, an entire era where prophecies would be held in suspension, where visions would be delayed, where the vibrant daily whispers of God to his people were postponed. But before that great silence fell like a curtain, God chose one last man for one final urgent call. He didn't anoint a famous priest from the temple's inner sanctum or a celebrated leader. He chose an obscure man, a voice from the margins, someone whose face was unknown in the corridors of power. And his message was not just for them. It wasn't just for ancient Jerusalem, a city that believed it had survived the worst. It echoes through time for every generation that has mistaken ritual for relationship, for every culture that has mastered the choreography of faith while losing the rhythm of a beating heart. It is for every soul that has ever felt the chilling gap between the words they say and the life they live. And perhaps it is for you. To any outward observer, Jerusalem was thriving. It was a city reborn from the ashes of exile, a testament to its own resilience. The great temple stood at its heart, its stones gleaming with the fresh polish of national pride. The system was fully operational. The air hummed with activity. Sacrifices were offered daily. The smell of incense and roasting meat hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of their devotion. The festivals were celebrated with noise, color, and prescribed joy. The great machine of religion was running flawlessly. But the spirit that was meant to power the machine was gone. God had quietly left the building. He left. The worship had not stopped, but the wonder had vanished. The ancient hymns, words that had once made kings tremble, were now sung by rote, their power lost. The great altar, meant to be a place of sacred, terrifying transaction, still burned day and night. But its fire was hollow, its smoke rising like a sigh of indifference. The priests, men descended from Aaron, robed in sacred garments they no longer revered, moved with the detached efficiency of actors. They could recite the law flawlessly from memory, but their own hearts remained untouched by its truth. They brought lambs to the altar, yes, but they were the rejects from their flocks, the diseased, the blind, the ones with broken legs. It wasn't that they failed to notice the flaws, it was that they no longer cared. This spiritual decay had seeped into the very soul of the people. They still brought their tithes, but it was from their leftovers, not their first fruits. They still recited their prayers, but with no urgency, no real expectation of an answer. They still called him Lord, but the word was a hollow echo from their lips, utterly disconnected from their choices in the marketplace and the bedroom. Religion had become a grand national performance, and behind this beautiful, holy-looking curtain, justice was sold to the highest bidder. Marriage vows were treated as disposable contracts, and worship was a mechanical, loveless duty. Into this perfectly polished hypocrisy walked a man. He had no credentials, no famous lineage, no scrolls of distinction from the rabbinical schools. All Malachi had was a fire in his bones and a voice that was not his own. He was one man, walking through a nation that had mastered the art of bowing without kneeling, of singing without weeping, and of sacrificing without surrendering anything of value. He stood in the temple courts, watching it all. He saw a priest, a man named Phineas, casually inspect a lamb with a cataract in one eye and a noticeable limp. Phineas sighed, not with pity for the animal, but with boredom. He gestured for it to be taken to the altar. God is abundant, he likely told himself. It is the gesture that matters. Malachi then turned his gaze beyond the temple walls. He saw a wealthy merchant, a man who loudly praised God on the Sabbath, laughing by a fire. His arm was wrapped around a young, beautiful woman, her foreign jewelry jingling softly. Her smile was radiant. But Malachi saw someone else. Just beyond the glow of the fire, standing in the deep shadow of an old olive tree, was another woman. Silver streaked her hair, and the sorrow of 1,000 betrayals was etched onto her face. It was the man's wife, the wife of his youth, the woman who had stood by him when he had nothing, who had believed in him when he was a nobody. Now, in his prosperity, she was cast aside like a broken piece of pottery. Malachi couldn't stay silent. He stepped into the light, his shadow falling over the laughing group. His voice, though not loud, cut through the night. "Is this how you repay the covenant of your youth?"
He asked the merchant. "Did she not walk beside you when your hands were empty? And now that you prosper, you forget the sacred vow made before the Lord God, who was a witness to it all." The man scoffed. "A man must follow his heart." Malachi's eyes burned with a fire that had nothing to do with the bonfire. "And the Lord sees what the heart hides. He does not forget." A chilling silence fell. When he finally spoke to the nation, his words were not poetic. They were surgical. "I have loved you," he said, delivering God's opening line. It wasn't a plea. It was a verdict. And the people, so accustomed to their comfort, responded with cynical confusion. "Loved us?"
And how exactly have you loved us? It was the question of a heart that had grown so cold it could no longer recognize warmth. But Malachi was just beginning. He dismantled their piety piece by piece. He pointed to the altar. "You would not dare offer this garbage to your own governor," he boomed. "Why do you present it to the King of Heaven?" He exposed the priests who had grown weary of their duties, calling their sacred work a burden. But not all were lost. Sprinkled throughout the city, hidden in the cracks of this broken society, were the quiet ones, the remnant. A weaver who hummed the psalms with genuine praise as she worked her loom. A stonemason who shared his meager lunch with a beggar every day. A small group of families who met in secret, not to conspire, but to speak of the Lord's faithfulness, to encourage one another, and to pray that God had not forgotten them. They didn't have a platform. They didn't make a sound. But their faithfulness was a fragrant offering in a city of stench, and the Lord saw them. He leaned in to listen to their whispers, and he recorded their names in a scroll of remembrance. For true faithfulness, however hidden, is never overlooked by heaven. One night, alone in his room, the weight of his mission pressing him into the dust, a vision was seared into Malachi's soul. He felt a heat that was not of this world. "The day is coming," a voice spoke, not to his ears, but to his spirit. "It will burn like a furnace. All the arrogant and every evildoer will be consumed like stubble, left with neither root nor branch." He felt the terror of that fiery judgment. But then, the vision shifted. Through the smoke, a light began to dawn, soft and healing. "But for you who revere my name," the voice continued, its tone shifting to one of infinite tenderness, "the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings." The next morning, Malachi walked into the temple courtyard for the last time. He walked with that vision living inside him. The priests were busy. The money changers were clinking coins. The daily machine was in full swing. He climbed the steps of the great altar, his worn sandals slapping against stone, polished by centuries of sacred footsteps. A stillness began to spread from him, a silence that consumed the noise. Priests paused, worshippers turned. His voice, now calm and clear, spoke the final prophecy of the age. The day is coming, burning like a furnace. He let the words hang in the air. "But for you who revere my name," he said, his eyes scanning the crowd and finding the old weaver, the stonemason, the faces of the faithful remnant, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings. A hush washed over the temple, a wind no one could feel, but everyone sensed. The words weren't just a warning, they were a promise, not just of fire, but of healing, not eternal silence, but a coming light, the reward for watching. With that, his work was done. That night, by the flicker of a single lamp, he unrolled a final piece of parchment. His hands, though aged, moved with solemn purpose. He inscribed the vision, the verdict, and the ultimate promise. It was the last living breath of prophecy Israel would hear for 400 years. And here is the reward for following this story to its very end. That great silence that followed was not God's absence. It was a sacred pause. It was the fallow field of history, resting and preparing for the most important seed ever to be planted. It was the held breath of heaven, waiting for the perfect moment, because the next voice that would break the silence would not come from a temple, but from the wilderness. The echo of Malachi's scroll would come to life. 4 centuries later, a man named John the Baptist, with fire in his eyes and a voice like thunder, would fulfill the prophecy. "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers." He stood in the Jordan River crying, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." God never ends with judgment. He concludes with redemption. The promise Malachi recorded found its ultimate fulfillment. The Son of Righteousness did rise, not as a metaphor, but as a man. Jesus Christ walked the earth, and with him came healing in his wings. The blind saw, the lame walked, the broken were made whole. He was the refiner's fire Malachi spoke of, cleansing the temple. He was the fulfillment of the entire law and all the prophets. He finished what Malachi began. The temple would fall, the systems would collapse, but the promise, the real promise of a God who never forgets his remnant, would remain. And so, that ancient voice still echoes today, asking us the same questions. Have we confused our traditions with true transformation? Have we learned to perform acts of faith while keeping our hearts safely locked away? This story isn't just history, it's a mirror. Take a moment to think about this powerful story. What part of Malachi's message, the call against hollow worship, the promise to the faithful remnant, the hope of a rising sun, speaks most directly to your life today? Share your reflection in the comments below. We read them all and believe this is how we learn and grow together. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the story is far from over. Join us for our next video as we continue to uncover the timeless truths woven into these sacred narratives.